So today we're going to dive into something I think we all struggle with a bit, and that's fear, what it is, and what we can do about it.
Yeah.
So we found this really interesting guide called Comment détruire vos peurs et enfin passer à l'action,
Okay.
which translates to How to Destroy Your Fears and Finally Take Action.
Wow.
So right off the bat, it seems like they're taking a very proactive, maybe even aggressive stance toward this thing that makes a lot of people feel pretty powerless.
Yeah, I mean, just the title alone, Destroy Your Fears, kind of has that in-your-face kind of feel right.
Totally. So what we're going to try to do today is really break down this guide and see what useful stuff we can pull out of it. We want to understand why fear can be so paralyzing,
Right.
and more importantly, what this guide says we can do about it.
Yeah, because, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Like you're about to do something you really want to do or you need to do, and then this fear just bubbles up and stops you dead in your tracks.
It's the worst. I mean, the guide starts off by asking this really basic question. Why does fear even paralyze us?
Right.
It says that, like, obviously fear is important for survival, keeping us safe.
Yeah.
But it also often goes way overboard and actually becomes a roadblock to doing anything.
It's true. Like our brains, I think, sometimes mix up real danger
Yeah.
with just the idea of risk,
Totally.
Like we might react to like social awkwardness or maybe failing at something with the same intensity as if we were facing a wild animal or something.
Exactly. That fight or flight response kicks in. And
Right. And the thing is, like, neuroscience shows that the amygdala, that's like the fear center of the brain,
yeah.
it can be triggered by just imagining stuff almost as much as by actual threats.
Whoa.
So recognizing that our brains might be overreacting, I think that's a really key first step.
For sure. And to illustrate this, the guide uses a really common example,
Yeah.
avoiding opportunities just because you're scared of being rejected.
Oh, yeah.
Has that ever happened to you? Like maybe not going for a promotion at work or not even starting a conversation with someone you're interested in, all because you're afraid of being told no.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah. So it's this very human thing, this fear of rejection.
Right.
And this is where the guide introduces what it calls truth, #1.
Interesting.
Fear is not real. It's an illusion that your brain creates.
Okay, now that's a pretty bold statement.
It is, right. So what do you think they mean by that?
Well, I don't think it's saying that the things we're scared of aren't real,
Yeah.
but more that the feeling of fear itself, in a lot of situations at least,
Right.
it's not always a direct response to some immediate danger, like something that's actually happening.
Right.
It's more like our minds just making up these worst case scenarios
Yeah.
and making us feel scared about them. So the first step is recognizing that the feeling, the actual feeling of being afraid, is often just something our minds cooked up.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So
Right.
like acknowledging that fear is often this kind of mental creation.
Exactly. And I think, by doing that, we can create a little bit of space
Yeah.
between ourselves and those feelings of fear. And that lets us question them.
Mhm.
Are they really valid?
I like that. So the next step in the guide is about really getting specific with your fears. It's not enough to just kind of have this general feeling of being afraid.
Right.
You really have to pinpoint it. The guide actually suggests writing down your fears, like putting them on paper.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it says it actually forces you to confront them in a concrete way,
Yeah, that makes sense. If it's just floating around in your head, it's easy to avoid. But if it's right there in front of you.
Right, you can't ignore it.
Exactly.
And then the guide says you should do this exercise where you repeatedly ask yourself, what's the absolute worst that could actually happen? So you actually imagine that worst case scenario playing out.
Oh, wow.
And it's not about like dwelling on the negative, but really trying to assess how bad it would truly be if that worst thing actually happened.
Okay, I see.
And you know what's really interesting?
What's that?
The guide says that something like 90% of the time,
Wow.
when you actually examine that worst case scenario,
Yeah.
it turns out to be way less catastrophic
Oh, interesting.
than you initially thought.
So our minds are basically blowing things out of proportion.
It seems like like we create these scary movies in our heads that almost never match up with reality.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
And this leads into truth #2, which is
Hit me with it.
your fear disappears as soon as you face it rationally.
Okay, so obviously fear might not vanish immediately,
Right.
but from your experience, how does thinking about your fears rationally, how does that help weaken that emotional hold they have on us?
Well, it's like when you approach your fears logically, you're basically using reason to combat an emotional reaction.
Right.
So you start thinking about the actual probabilities, the likely outcomes, versus those extreme possibilities that our minds tend to conjure up. And this rational approach, it kind of takes the mystery out of the fear,
It demystifies it?
Yeah, exactly. And that helps reduce its emotional intensity.
Makes sense.
So you can see it more objectively.
Yeah, so like if you're really afraid of public speaking, you might think, okay, what's the worst that could happen? I freeze up, everyone laughs at me.
Right.
But then rationally, how likely is that really?
Yeah, and even if it did happen, is it really the end of the world?
Probably not. Embarrassing, sure.
Yeah.
But not the end of the world.
Right. Okay, so we've identified the fear, thought about the worst case scenario, and now the big question.
Okay, the big one.
How do we take action when we're still feeling afraid?
Oh, man, that's the tough part.
It is, right? This is where the guide brings up this idea of progressive exposure.
Okay, what's that?
So it's not about just throwing yourself into the deep end of your fear.
Right.
It's about taking small steps, like baby steps.
Gotcha.
So for example, let's say you are really afraid of public speaking.
Oh, yeah. Classic example.
You wouldn't start by trying to give a TED Talk to 1,000 people, right?
Oh, God, no.
You'd start much smaller, maybe by speaking up in a team meeting at work.
Right.
Or giving a presentation to a couple of friends.
Yeah, just getting comfortable with the idea of speaking in front of people.
Exactly. I want you listening to think about something you're afraid of. What's one tiny step you could take today to start facing that fear?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything crazy.
Right, just something small.
Like if you're scared of heights, maybe just stand on a chair.
Yeah, or look out a window on the second floor.
Exactly. Just get a little closer to that edge.
And I think this gradual approach works so well because it lets you build your confidence slowly.
Right, like you get these small wins along the way. And each win makes the fear a little bit weaker.
Totally. Like, I remember early in my career, the idea of presenting to a group would make me so nervous.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. My palms would get all sweaty and I would get all flustered.
I feel you.
But it wasn't until I started just speaking up in small meetings that I started to get more comfortable with the whole thing.
You slowly built up to it.
Exactly. And the guide also emphasizes how important it is to just take action without overthinking it.
Right, because it's so easy to get stuck in that analysis paralysis, right?
Oh, totally. We've all talked ourselves out of doing stuff because we overanalyzed it.
Yeah. And truth #3 is all about that, it says.
Let's hear it.
Action kills fear. The more you move, the less you are afraid.
So what do you think is going on there? Like, why does taking action actually help reduce fear?
I think it's because when you're actually doing something, your focus shifts away from the fear and onto the task at hand.
Right, so you're not stuck in your head just thinking about how scared you are.
Exactly. Plus, every time you take action and it works out okay, that gives you evidence that maybe your fear wasn't as justified as you thought.
Right, it chips away at the fear a little bit each time.
Totally. So instead of fear leading to inaction, you're breaking that cycle. Action leads to less fear, which leads to more action, and so on.
I love that. It's like this positive feedback loop.
Yeah, and even a tiny action can get that loop started.
Awesome. Now, the guide also talks about how we can rewire our brains.
Oh, wow.
To have a different relationship with fear. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So one technique is called positive visualization.
Positive visualization, all right.
This is where you basically imagine yourself going through the situation you're afraid of.
Okay.
But everything goes well. You're successful, confident, and you achieve what you set out to do.
So instead of playing those negative scenarios on repeat in your head, you're making a mental movie where you crush it.
Exactly. It's like training your brain to expect success instead of failure.
I like it.
Makes sense, right. Another interesting technique they talk about is reframing.
Reframing. Okay.
And specifically, they say to consciously replace the word fear with excitement.
Interesting.
It sounds super simple, but do you think that kind of language shift can actually change how we feel about something?
I think it can. I mean, excitement has a completely different vibe than fear, right?
Totally.
Like excitement means You're looking forward to something. It's positive, maybe even a little thrilling.
Yeah.
But fear is all negative. It makes you want to avoid stuff.
Right.
So if you intentionally switch those words, you might start thinking about the situation differently.
Like focusing on the potential good stuff.
Exactly, instead of just the scary stuff.
I dig it.
Yeah.
And the guide also talks about how important it is to view failure as a learning opportunity.
Right, not as like the end of the world.
It's just feedback, a chance to figure out what went wrong and try again.
Because if we think of failure as this huge, scary thing,
Yeah.
of course we're going to be terrified of it.
Right. And this all leads to truth, #4.
What's that?
Successful people are afraid, but they act anyway.
That's powerful.
It is, right. It's saying that feeling fear is totally normal. Even successful people feel it. The difference is they don't let it stop them.
They take action despite the fear.
Exactly. And to make all of this practical, for you listening,
Okay, I like it.
the guide gives this challenge of the day.
The challenge of the day. All right, what is it?
It's a way to put all these ideas into practice.
Okay, I'm ready.
So the challenge is this. Identify one thing that you're avoiding because of fear.
Okay.
And commit to taking one tiny step towards facing it today.
Just one small step.
That's it. It could be something really small, something that feels a little uncomfortable but manageable.
Yeah, like calling that person you've been putting off calling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or signing up for that class you're interested in.
Or just wearing that outfit that makes you feel a little self-conscious.
Exactly. The point is to take action, even if it's a tiny action.
Right. Break that cycle of fear and inaction.
And the guide even suggests sharing your fear and the step you're going to take with someone else.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it can help you stay accountable.
And get support, too.
Right. Okay, so to recap.
Let's do it.
We've talked about why fear can be so paralyzing, how to identify and examine your fears, and some practical strategies for taking action even when you're still feeling afraid.
Yeah. And even how to start changing your brain's response to fear.
Exactly. And like the guide says, the most important thing is deciding that you're not going to let fear control you anymore.
That's so important.
It is. That decision, that commitment to push past your limits is what allows you to achieve the things you want.
So powerful.
And to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, hit me.
Remember how we talked about acting in the face of fear being a skill?
Yeah, something you can practice and get better at.
Exactly. So think about that one small step you're going to take today, even if it feels a little scary. How do you think doing that, even if it's just a tiny thing, will change how you see challenges in the future?
I like that.
Do you think it will make you more confident in your ability to overcome them?
Food for thought.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That was awesome.
No, great stuff in this guide, right?
Really great. I'm excited to see what people do with the challenge of the day.
Me too.
All right. Until next time.
See ya.